So welcome everybody to, I think this is our third network convergence. Am I right, Francisco?
It's actually a fourth. Yeah.
The fourth. This is the fourth one. Just some quick introduction stuff because that's kind of what we do. Part of the fun of this is getting to know each other, right? And so when we volunteer, we have to like talk about ourselves, whether we like that or not. But my name's Brian DeBar. I'm located in Pleasanton, California. I'm originally from Michigan, but I've been in California now for about 25, 26 years. Um, as you can see, kind of from my prior lives, stuff here on the slide, mostly in tech, at least the last since about 2000. Um, I'm involved in a bunch of different NFM projects that you can see listed here. And then later on, we're going to talk about one that I've proposed very shortly. But I'm happy to be here. This is my family that you can see, including our dog, Amber, out in our backyard. I will confess, this might have been a couple of years ago, so my hair's a little bit grayer probably now than it was back then. But anyway, I'm happy to be here, delighted to be asked to facilitate our fourth convergence. Our community continues to grow. When I checked in with Francisco to see kind of like how much it had grown, the last time this slide said something like about, I think, 300 or 400 plus members with about 300 companies. And so we continue to grow. We're at 600 plus members, headed towards 700, and now somewhere between 400 and 500 companies. And I don't know if we're going to continue to like try to have all the logos on this slide because it was pretty busy last time, but this is a kind of a representative set. And hopefully you see yourself reflected here. As in terms of our agenda today, we're going to try to stick to time, hopefully. We've got about 10 minutes to do this first part. We're about 5 minutes behind, so we're going to move quickly. Then we're going to get into what we call network guiding, which is the stuff that we do to help orient folks that maybe haven't been going to all of the meetings and kind of keep you updated on some of the terminology and other thinking that's going on within the projects. We're going to go over the new proposals. So that'll be Francisco and I today talking a little bit about what we're proposing in advance of asking for your votes over the next 7 days. And then we're going to do some guided Q&A where the project catalysts, if you haven't heard that term, we think of them as the leads of, or the sponsors, the facilitators of our project dialogues. We'll take your questions and then we'll do some breakout rooms with the catalysts. And hopefully this will allow you to have some one-to-many, about hopefully small group conversations about what they're doing, pose for follow-up questions, and if you're interested in getting involved in any of the projects, you can talk to them about what's going on and how you might be able to contribute and get clarification. And then we'll wrap up towards the end. So with that all laid out there, my recognition for the day, and this is kind of a tradition that we've started with the catalysts that are doing that and the others that are doing facilitation, is to just kind of like do a quick who has influenced you, who brought you into the group, who have you been working with, and you already are feeling sort of a lot of reciprocity with. And this is kind of my list, the folks that have helped me think through some of the preamble for my project proposal, but also that we've been bouncing ideas off of in these other projects that I'm involved with. So we've got Alan and Alan. Alan Kamen actually was responsible for alerting me to the existence of NFM with his original post on LinkedIn. Akio, Dan, Donna, Deacon, certainly Francisco, Jaya, who I've come back to some contact with after working alongside her, albeit at a little bit of a distance, many years ago at Cisco. Joe, who's helping me out this morning by being our chat facilitator and watcher. Katarina, who has been very patient with me as I steal Francisco away from time to time for entire afternoons and take him offline. Nate, Sally, Sarah, who's helped me so much by loaning me her template for today. So a lot of these slides were originally developed by her, so I want to give her credit for forging that. path for the format you're looking at today. And also Zane, who's been my thought partner about all manner of stuff. So thank you to all of those folks. Now, with that said, thinking about other recognition, because we want this to be a participatory type of thing today. It's not all about me standing up here, sort of talking the slides. Give you guys an opportunity to jump in. So whether people have been giving you their time, sharing their knowledge, connecting you with other folks, or they've just really been involved in the sausage making, hence the icon of the sausage maker, of actually getting some stuff done. Let me open it up and see, take yourself off mute if you've got somebody that you'd like to recognize this morning who's been particularly, present in your NFM experience. Anyone?
Go ahead, Francisco.
You got your hand raised. Go ahead.
Yep.
So just very quickly, I also wanted to recognize Paola, Ivana, and Stephanie that have been attending many of the project meetings that I've been either facilitating or attending as a team member. And especially Ivana has been a super active member of the Network First ONA project. She has developed the presentations for both active and passive ONA, and she's been super active asynchronously and online. So yeah, she's a really top contributor.
And on my end, I'd like to give recognition to Sana Stora from Latvia for keeping us grounded in the scholarship around economics as well as social dynamics.
And this is Larry. I'd like to throw it back to Brian for all of the participation you've done, and also for being my sort of other brother and by another mother or whatever in this group, and being able to identify with you and commiserate with you. Appreciate your work, Brian. Thank you.
Larry, thank you so much for that shout out. I appreciate that, and the feeling is absolutely mutual. I do think that many of us have probably had this experience where we have found in a cadre of like minds people that are like so simpatico, it's just a gift, right? So yeah, Larry, I appreciate that. Thank you. Anyone else?
Sure. I'd like to thank everyone actually who's attended my podcast meetings, and in particular Larry for his patience. We've had a lot of conversations, and Joe, also Francisco, and obviously Sarah. She's not here, I don't think, right now, but everybody's just been super welcoming. I haven't been part of this for that long, but everyone has been super welcoming. I did join a bunch of projects, but then I got busy myself with my own business that I'm a co-founder of, and then I just had overload, so I had to just step back and kind of get on with things. But I think everybody that I've spoken to has had a like mind, and it's just been incredible, actually, to be perfectly honest. So thank you, and thanks for hosting, Brian.
Thank you, Nat. I think this podcast thing is a wonderful deal, and it's something I haven't gotten involved in yet because I'm already like trying not to overstretch myself with like more than 5 of these projects, but definitely important stuff. Anybody else?
Yes, my name is Ileana Moreno from Mexico City. I'm so glad to see you and see new faces. It's so comfortable to add very beautiful people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ileana. Any other folks before we move on to the next section? Okay. And this is probably one method of recognition. Like I know that there are shout outs going out in Slack all the time for people helping each other. It's just that kind of community. So just taking a moment here in the midst of the convergence to do a little bit more of that. So let's talk about where we're going with the guiding process, like this idea of introducing and sharing and circulating ideas and words and terminology and everything that we're we've been working on as a group or in these projects. I wanted to take a minute here and revisit something we talked about last time, just in case we catch some folks on the call this time that maybe weren't here last time. But this is something that we continue to refine. We introduced it last time at depth. The background to this, before I kind of re-show you the definitions, is that we did this kind of 30-day challenge project, right? And we were trying to learn from okay, first project out of the gate, how does it work? How does it fit into the NFM mindset and some of the things that we've talked about on the manifesto page? And what did we actually do, sort of debriefing on that project? What did that process look like in the rearview mirror? And how can we create a framework that's native to our NFM mindsets and our community, that we can all recognize, that we can use going forward from those learnings, from that experience, and maybe share with others outside of NFM at some point, right? And this is kind of what we came up with. We ended up calling it the 8 C's. It was not something that kind of we came up with out of abstract or sort of a lit review, and we thought we were doing something nobody had ever done before. What we were trying to do is describe how we do it within the community based on a couple of the early projects that kicked off in the discussion with those catalysts and other things. And then also, taking a lot of input from Francisco along the way. And this is a project that this outcome came out of our Poetics team, which was led by Sarah, who, by the way, sends her regrets that she could not be here today because she's actually with a client and couldn't reschedule that meeting. But this, through her leadership and facilitation, this is what we kind of ended up with. So to look at kind of our high level view of this, it does describe a cycle. I want to note, though, that we don't have the usual arrows indicating direction here, and there's a reason for that. That's intentional. We do realize that sometimes projects step forward and then they step backward. They run into something, they come into new knowledge, they have a collective experience as a group, and they realize, wait a second, we need to take a step back. Let's back up a space. We might thought we were ready for cohering, but let's go back to catalyzing for a second, revisit that. We've got new ideas. Maybe somebody new joined the team in mid-process and brought some new thinking, whatever it might have been. So there's no arrows. It's okay to kind of move a little bit backward and forwards, even though we have, it does follow the phases of the moon. The moon does not actually phase backwards, but, we're leaving ourselves that little bit of wiggle room there to be a little bit nonlinear, because in keeping with, the reality of projects, sometimes they do take a step back for good, very valid reasons. So to begin with, we start at the top, at the kind of the 12 o'clock position here under calling. And what we mean by calling is that any one of you might have an insight. You might have a moment where you're thinking, I've got this intuition that there's a value to be added. There's goodness to be had if we explore or put some effort in a particular direction. And usually that person who has that intuition has some ideas about what they think the outcomes might be. And they also have some idea about what they think the purpose is that kind of connects and drives those outcomes. So once they have that kind of in mind, the methodology, as some of you most of you maybe know, is that we submit a proposal. We're going to talk about some proposals a little bit later, and we go through a ratification process. So that's our definition here in short, that you have this impulse that involves contribution on your own part, but probably is going to need the contribution of lots of other people too in order to make it work. You make this intention visible to the network through the proposal, and then that person who's bringing the insight volunteers normally to act as the project's catalyst. Now, we have had a couple of cases where people have had ideas, they don't have time to lead, and then they have to kind of go about finding somebody who is like-minded enough that they feel like they might be willing to lead and be the catalyst. But in most cases, the person who makes the proposal is volunteering as a catalyst. And then we move through during the course of moving towards outcomes. We move through these next 7 phases of the moon, if you will. As the community looks at this and looks at the proposal, the voting, this is the converging piece, right? And this is part of the reason why we call this the convergent meeting, and part of why we do proposals in this meeting is to be, aligned with kind of that thinking. And this is how we decided that this was the word we were going to use for that phase. Then, following the ratification, you're going to be, looking for people to join, right? So you open the Slack space, people join the Slack space. That's how you know who's interested. And you start channeling that, getting people's thoughts. Why did you join? What did you think you could offer? And that takes us into the cohering space, right? The group, sort of develops their own, rhythm and culture, starting from where the catalyst was thinking and then evolving it from there. Then we get into crafting, where we start thinking about, okay, what do we need? What are the things that we need to create, if you will, that are going to help us actually deliver the outcomes? And maybe we'll start, sort of forming the outcomes at that point. Or maybe there'll be things we need to build, that are a step towards or a bridge towards the ultimate outcomes. Then you get into condensing. As you start, sort of creating these things start falling together, ideally, right? You start to have aha moments. You may even rethink some of your outcomes and say, we were going in this direction, but actually maybe this would be better. As we come off the back end of the condensing part within the team, then we come out and we circulate the ideas back to the broader community. Again, part of what we do here in the Convergence. And then as we take that feedback in and we blend it into what the team has been working on, things start to crystallize and we start to feel like the outcomes are something that we can publish, if you will, to ourselves or maybe externally, depending on what the outcome is, such as this 8Cs model, which we actually crystallized around and shared with the group during the last Convergence. So just kind of going over that quickly again, as an example of an outcome, certainly, but also just to give the folks who may have missed the last time a little bit of a quick walkthrough. Any questions about this before we move on?
Nothing on the chat thread either. Go ahead.
I just want to add very quickly, Brian, thanks a lot for this great explanation. For those of you that have been involved for several months, you might remember the experience from the 30-day challenge, right? Where we try to feed a lot of information about areas of interest and work availability to an AI model. And we had the AI model configure 8 different groups that were working for 30 days to deliver specific deliverables, right? And that experiment was a disaster. We saw basically that teams were not able to assemble based on instructions from AI. Some people were confused about why they had been assigned to a certain team or why a certain person had been assigned as the leader of a certain team. But what we saw is that the teams where there was a person, at least one person that was passionate about the topic being proposed, were operating with a much higher level of effectiveness and efficiency. So that's how we basically iterated into the initial version of this model that was shared at the second Convergence. And then the Poetics team has done an amazing work, basically finding alternative nomenclature for each of the spaces. And I'm so proud that now we have a much more comprehensive and clear model that we can explain. And is that the one that we are actually using now for the first pilots of this methodology in real companies. So yeah, thanks Sarah, Brian, all the people that have been joining the Poetics sessions because they have been super, super productive.
And somewhat related to this, Francisco, I think we should also mention Zane's project. That was sort of I would call it a flash project almost, because we met I think 1, maybe 2 times. And it might have been 3 altogether. But she walked us through sort of a game model that, to make a long story short, shed a lot of light on what happens when you try to jump to outcomes without like going through these other phases. It was very enlightening that like we all kind of thought we knew what we were doing because we didn't like slow down and do these first 2 or 3. We tried to jump right to crafting, and that again, informed this model, I think, and our thinking going forward. So thanks to Zane for that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions, comments about this model? Maybe from the team that was involved. Anybody else on the Poetics team want to chime in about kind of how we got to this? Okay. All right. Now, moving on to the next piece. Coming out of this same Poetics team, and again, Sarah would love to be here to do this, but we're continuing to evolve nomenclature. And one of the things that we have spent a lot of time dialoguing about, because as we were trying to like work through the 8C model, we kept talking about, well, what do we mean by project? We all throw that word around, and we're talking about the projects out there, in the outside world, but we're also talking about the projects and the proposals to create projects inside NFM. How is an NFM project unique or distinct from maybe the more generic ways we've all come to think about projects? And so this is our effort to do that. And so here we are circulating this definition back to folks. And I want to just stop for a second and say the purpose of this meeting is, at least in part, always to generate feedback, right? And you may give us feedback right in the moment. You might take yourself off mute and ask a question or make a comment, or you might come back and look at this later after you've had time to think about it and want to give feedback to somebody and say, here's the thing that occurred to me, sort of later in the day, or maybe, over the weekend or something. So feel free to either, send me feedback because I'm facilitating, send Francisco feedback because this is kind of his baby, or send, in this case, Sarah feedback because this is her project and she's the catalyst. But whoever you want to send it to, however you want to get it to us today, tomorrow, the next time, right in the moment, or whatever, please feel free to provide that. Now, the idea is that a project is a container. We talk a lot about containers. We talk about NFM generally as a container, but within NFM, the project contains this effort towards a certain set of kind of outcomes, right? We use the word collective co-creation here very deliberately. And we articulate it, of course, first as a proposal, but then once ratified, we start referring to it as a project. They do vary in form. I just mentioned a minute ago how we had sort of a flash project with Zane because we got to our insight very quickly. And that was really kind of the purpose of that project, or at least one of the main purposes of that project was to sort of a proof point of insight about like what happens when you don't have all the information and uninformed members are trying to succeed without kind of really knowing what the target is they're shooting at. So we have defined teams and we have clear endpoints. They're really well articulated that way right from the beginning, and it's sticky, right? And the people join the team, and that's fine. It tends to carry through, but other things evolve kind of in midstream, and the group decides to sort of change course. And the purpose as originally defined may end up being different. The outcomes as originally suggested or forecasted and end up evolving into something else. So that's why we talk about how some are clear, some are more amorphous, and we believe that's okay. All of these are valid forms of contribution. And what matters isn't that it's, sort of follows a nice waterfall, organized project management methodology. What matters is that as you're doing it and as it wraps up, that value happens and residual value that's durable for the network is created, right? And of course, that the experience is good. And so you remain intrinsically involved, throughout the project, that's how you can tell it's working. Because if at some point people start to feel disconnected from what's going on, then you have to like stop, and that might be one of those places where you might take a step back or two in the project process in order to get traction and engagement again. So it's both operational and relational. There is this aspect of we are attempting to produce something. It might be a tangible value or it might be a slightly intangible value, but we are trying to produce value. We are outcome oriented about this, but it's also relational because it's both, right results, right way. It's the kind of the what and the why that you're doing it, but it's also how, right? And so you're always looking to think about what is the impact on the people that are in the project? What is the impact on the larger community? And, are we moving through this in a way that feels good to everybody and feels like they what they're offering in terms of contribution is fully valued? Because if you're not valuing the contribution as it comes in, it's going to be hard to get value coming out, if that makes sense philosophically. So a namespace for where the network has agreed to direct energy, that being our energy, our time, our thinking, and then trusting that the network will transform the idea, the people doing it, and the network itself. Now, I didn't read this word for word. I know a lot of people that really hate it when people do the slides. So I'm letting you sort of like read it while I talk. Obviously, we're recording this. As we get feedback about this and feel like this is firming up, it'll get posted to the website under the glossary that Francisco's maintaining. But we wanted to put it out here today to get you thinking about it, and also if there's any feedback, to gather that feedback. I'm seeing some stuff coming in the chat, especially that it's operational and relational. Thank you, Julia. I'm glad that resonates. Any other thoughts or comments? Feel free to put it in chat or take yourself off mute. Take a moment and give us your thoughts.
I'll chime in briefly and say that we realize we're throwing a lot at you guys, so feel free to look at this and then give whatever comments you might have offline if you feel the need to mull this stuff over a bit.
Yes, and as Brian said, we're keeping all these terms on the website in a section called glossary. I just added the link on the chat. So if you want to check it, you can get there the most updated explanation of the different terms that are emerging in the community. I know that as it grows, it's increasingly difficult to catch up, but we appreciate all your flexibility and taking the time to go through all these terms.
All right, well, I'm trying to keep on time here, so let's move to the next one. So one of the other ideas that we've kind of been thinking about in connection with this whole idea of network guiding is this idea of network nurturing. The idea of guiding a network is sort of one element of network nurturing, if you will, right? The idea that we share frameworks and terminology and symbols and other things to help, as we sort of coalesce around a common understanding or certain ways of representing what we're about in Network First, that we share those things. That's the guiding part. But there's all other kinds of network nurturing that go on as well. The way that we treat each other, the way that we share, new events or new members. How we welcome people, how we post things on LinkedIn about the work that we're doing and the excitement that we have about it. All of those things nurture our network. So, we wanted to kind of like name that. We wanted to talk about this idea that while we are cultivating outcomes, individual outcomes, there's this larger care and feeding of the network, the entire network itself. So that's all of this, wrap of culture that fosters the collaborative freedom that allows the network to produce things, right? So we want that obviously to be meaningful. We want it to be inspiring, but we know it's not going to sort of like take care of itself. It takes energy. Energy has to be input into it in order to sort of maintain the momentum and the cohesion of the network. So we don't want things to become transactional. We don't want things to become extractive. These are words that we see as largely negative, if not completely negative. And so how do we do that? What's the attitude? What is the mindset? And that's kind of what we're trying to describe in this definition here. So we talk about kind of what it is, that networking, the way maybe people think of it, generically is typically transactional. So in the second paragraph, we talk about how you do this because you're looking for something. You're looking for information, or you're looking for help, you're looking for something. What we're trying to do is, in a sort of like JFK kind of way, ask not what the network can offer you, ask what you can do for the network, and think about it as something where, this is this field of goodness that we're all, cultivating. We're all out there, pulling weeds and, trying to make sure that the growth of this community that we have has the right conditions in order to continue to thrive, without what we might worry about would be some sort of cultural drift that might happen, right? That we would eventually, sort of slip away from our initial aspirations and lose sight of those things. So how do we do this? Well, trust is a big thing, right? We need to have enough trust that we feel good about both recognizing people that are helping us, but also giving feedback to people that maybe aren't on the same page that we need them to be, right? And say that what you just articulated seems to conflict with something I feel very, passionately about, and I want to talk about it. I need to talk with you about it. And so this trust is about like both sides of the feedback continuum, the positive feedback and the constructive feedback. But also keeping commitments, giving time and attention, thinking about like the whole sort of life cycle of our dialogues, and keep staying invested, not because you've got something particularly in mind that you want to get out of it, but because you're watching the dialogue and you're trying to maintain a certain vibe about that, a healthy, trusting, collaborative mindset. Things that can look like, we got to have a list sort of things down here at the bottom that we're talking about, checking in with people that you haven't heard from, or maybe even checking in with people that are new members that you haven't met yet, and just, telling, we say, maybe I'm a catalyst for this project. I thought I'd reach out. We're continuing to work on this project. We're just getting started. Maybe you'd want to be a member. Whatever it might be that gives you a reason to make new connections within the network. If we think about it from an O&A standpoint, the health of the network also can be seen that way, as we sort of represent that, that we don't want to see some nodes off here on the periphery with relatively few connections, because people who have been here a while don't know them and haven't reached out, right? So that's a way that we can create more interaction and more connectivity within the network, greater strength of the network. Rotating facilitation roles like I'm doing today. I raised my hand. I don't know what I was thinking, but it's kind of fun. I get to have this opportunity to talk with all of you. The deliberate practice, thinking if you're a project catalyst at the beginning of the meeting, coming up with like some sort of convention or tradition to stop and breathe for a moment, breathe in the network, if you will, and reestablish those connections in the midst of people's busy days before you jump into the actual work of, trying to create the outcomes of the project. Think about maybe the people and the relationships first. So that's all, sort of what led to our words here. Some of the background to that. Uh, any others that want to chime in and add a little bit to the flavor of what I just represented? Folks from the Poetics team who have been on this journey of thinking about nurturing. Anything you want to add?
Just real quick, a way that we've been referring in the meetings to network nurturing is actually the practice of recognition that we did at the beginning of this convergence, right? So do a shout out of about people that have been contributing, especially over the last month in this case, or over the last weeks in the case of the project. That's something that we typically refer to as network nurturing. But as you said, the definition is broader, so it encompasses other actions as well.
Thanks, Francisco. Ileana, looks like you've got your hand up.
Yes, yes. I want to tell us welcome to our wonderful community. I think that the only requirement to be here is to be your authentic self and share your ideas freely. We believe in informal leaderships where everyone's voice counts.
All true. Thank you, Ileana, for sharing that. The valuing other members of the network thing cannot be overstated, I don't think. One of the things that
I'd just like to chime in there a second.
Go
Sorry.
ahead,
I think also just remembering that we're all human, and sometimes we forget to thank people because we've got a lot on our minds, and actually not taking it too seriously if people do forget, because I forgot to say Kim and Katerina, right? And this is life, right? Because we are human and we're all busy, right? Probably doing 5 different jobs at the same time, and that's kind of where it is really. And in terms of opportunities will arise as we get to know each other better to do all sorts of really cool things. And actually it's that's a really great thing to just sort of remember. The better you get to know people, the more these opportunities kind of come along, really. So sorry to jump in there, Ivana, without putting my hand up. I'm
no, that's all right. I think we kind of just at the same time, so no worries. I just wanted to say it's network nurturing. I like that we value diverse opinions as well. It's not just like one monolith group think, you know what I mean? Like I kind of like how sometimes we do have some friction in some of the projects. I think that's a good thing. I when you're building something, I can't think of anything worse of when everyone's just in one tunnel vision and we're not we don't have like our peripheral vision on, right? So
yeah, and I'll add to what Ivana is saying, just that the collaborative attitude and shared vision for collaborative freedom kind of helps that, where it helps leverage different points of view to come up with a better collective point of view.
Yeah. Because that was one of my worries, when I first joined this. I'm like, okay, collaboration, is great, but there's times where it's too much, not too much collaboration, but too much synchronicity isn't a good thing either, because then we're never challenging each other, right? So.
Yes, I recognized Alan for that a couple of times because he loves to come in and say, well, this conversation is kind of going off in this direction. I hear a lot of this, but what about this other thing? And there's any number of folks that do that, but I've had the pleasure of Ellen very challenging me on a couple of things, and it's a gift when people will speak up. The sooner people speak up, the sooner you can refine the idea, the better the outcome you'll get. And I think this, like everything that we talk about, has sort of a balance to it. And Francisco and I talk a lot about this idea of sort of like the yin and yang aspects, the positive and negative, the white space and the full space of trying to manage NFM like this. And trust is one of those things here as part of, I'll just use it as an example and circle back to what Nat was saying. the idea that we might forget somebody, or the idea that we talk over each other, the idea that somebody jumps in ahead of the person who's raised their hand. Like, there's this kind of nice balance where we feel like we can jump in and we're not going to offend people, but we also don't jump in so much that it becomes our brand, right? It becomes, oh, that's the guy that always cuts everybody off, right? So that balance of respect, right? The respect enough to give and bend, but also the respect enough to stand back and create space for other people to speak. So yeah, there is definitely, all of the comments are kind of going in wonderful places here to help refine this, and I think we continue to create these shared understandings, and we'll probably continue to refine these terms a little bit in the glossary as we move through our experience together as a network. But we wanted to get some stuff up there, again, share it with you, get some feedback, maybe refine it, maybe let it set for a while. But as we move forward together as a community, think of these things as living definitions, right? As opposed to something that we've carved in stone and now we're trying to necessarily adhere to it over some long period of time. We expect it to evolve a little bit. Other thoughts? Okay. Go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next section here. It looks like I got to click back into the deck. There we go. So the Q&A, right? Thinking about we're doing a little bit of that now. Thoughts about your experiences. It can either be about the couple of things that we've talked about, or it might be something we've talked about before, like we talked about collaborative freedom in an earlier meeting. Anything coming to mind for people? Any ahas about, like, as new people come into the network and we welcome them, what are the things that we want to help them understand? Or maybe what are the things that, as you came into the network, were a little vague for you that maybe we need a term for? James, I see your hand.
I'm reasonably new in. I'm one of these, I think you call them catalysts for this private equity idea. And just at a mechanical level, I'd be quite interested to understand how we use Slack to either, do we set up our own teams once these things are ratified? Will you do that for us? How do we sort of then, because I want to reach out to this amazing group of 400 people and find out who's got some interest in playing with these ideas with me. So I'm not quite sure. I get the spirit. I think it's really powerful what you said today, because it's important that we understand the kind of rules of engagement, but to understand how we actually, in practical terms, coalesce around these projects and sort of get the best thinking out of people would be helpful to understand.
I can help answer, James, because now we're in a very interesting moment where we're actually starting to create network first communities with some of the companies that are volunteering for the network first company pilot. So James, the project you are leading is actually the network first community within CTS. This is the network first community for the network first manifesto. So it's a different one. So it's like, it's normal the overlap because you are in these stages, but it's a different.
It must project. Be the Spanish sun, but is it? But just while I've got the mic, is it not applicable to some extent to try to engage people here as well? Do you think, Francisco, or not?
Yeah, definitely. We're gonna define many best practices in these pilots that we can apply directly here, and Slack and the engagement with the Slack workspace still, whether in CTS or in the network first community, is being a huge bottleneck. So I appreciate all of you that are going through the learning curve of getting to be familiar with Slack if you haven't used it before, but it's really worth it once you because unfortunately there isn't really a better option right now there. So it's the less bad option, let's put it that way.
And I'll go so far as to say I myself was one of the people who would avoid Slack at all costs, and working with the Slack platform and Network First, it sort of cured me of that. So coming from a former skeptic.
Any others? Other thoughts about the network guiding experience? I mean, essentially, we're all peer mentoring each other, if you will, right? About like, what is this all about? And hopefully with some focus on the new members. Now, Francisco, I think we were talking about using the CTS technology to pair people up as mentors within NFM. Did I imagine that, or is that something that we were thinking about? And I'm not sure we've talked about much in the group with the group overall.
Well, I think one of the pending subjects that we have in the community in general is scalability and automation, right? And there is a lot of manual work that me and other people have been putting in the background, right? So every time, for example, that somebody joins the community, right, there is a lot of manual work between the Google form and the Excel file and the Slack channel. Then when somebody joins a project, the project catalyst has to be constantly checking who that person is to bring them to the regular meetings, or some information gets updated on online files. So now that agentic AI is opening so many opportunities for automation, definitely one of the areas that we can explore is how we can both match mentors with new members that are joining, how we can basically foster random interactions across the community. And I think that agentic AI is offering a lot of opportunities, both to make our operations more efficient and to increase that human connection and connection across participants. So that's something that we might be exploring. And not sure if that will look through extra responsibility within the events team, or a project that focus on network guiding, or let's see also what are the projects that come up within the next weeks.
And Francisco, Dimitri on the chat thread asks if we could use Slack free tier. So I'm not as familiar with the platform specifics for Slack. So is there a free tier in Slack?
We are using currently the free tier. There are some members that proactively paid by mistake for the paid version of Slack. So please do not send money to Slack to pay. We don't want to add any bills on you unintentionally. Luckily, we were able to reverse it. But the paid version of Slack can get really expensive when we are dealing with a community of about 700 people, right? Even though in reality there is probably 30 or 40 that are really active in the meetings. But for the time being, until something better comes out in the market, we'll probably have to continue using Slack, because the other option is Discord, that has a UI UX that is really more appealing for gamers, or even more technical than Slack. And I really haven't found. If you have any suggestions, feel free to add them on the chat or send them to me or propose them in the projects. But right now we're stuck with Slack for better or worse.
And to be honest, it's not all that painful. It's not really that painful, but
it hasn't been that painful yet. But as the time window for Slack messages gets to a point 90 days or whatever it is, right? And you go to look for something, and now you can't see it anymore in the free tier. That's the thing that's going to. So we have to be thinking about how we pull stuff forward, whether we move it onto the website or we do something else to refresh some of those old links that we've shared with people that start to drop off. So that's something that we're aware of. But that's a good comment. It's a good question. Any other thoughts? Okay. Well, keep them coming, and feel free to post them in Slack. Looks like I've got to click back into here. We want to take some time to talk about new proposals. I'll go first. One of the things that I just sort of had an intuition about, right? Thinking back about the calling piece. My insight was that we were working on different pieces of a narrative in different groups. So we're working on our symbology in the semiotics team. We were working on our terminology in the Poetics team, and so on and so forth. And that ideally, all of these things will create pieces that we will plug into a narrative. But we didn't have anybody, one person or one group responsible for that narrative. And it was something I think that was sort of by default falling on Francisco to keep explaining and keep explaining and keep explaining, to folks. They're like, no, what's the thing about that thing again? And then he would tell us again. And well, that process is actually kind of healthy for us to do internally. How do we come up with something that we can share externally? Things that we can pull from to make, say, LinkedIn posts, or things that we can talk, to potential members about before they're attending meetings, before they've signed on to the manifesto. Like, what does that look like? If somebody asks you, if somebody stops Joe, for example, and says, hey, Joe, I haven't seen you in a long time. He's getting his fifth cup of coffee for the day. He's down at the Starbucks and he's getting his coffee. And somebody says, what have you been up to? And he says, well, I guess, they say, what's new? Well, I'm in this Network First thing. Well, what's that? Right? What does that elevator pitch look like? Like, how do we tell this story without using sort of all of the specific use terminology that we're creating in a way that's sort of plain spoken? What's the short version of everything that we're about? And how do we make sure that that short version looks a lot like the longer version that we're all internalizing because we're living it every day? So this is sort of like, it's not quite elevator pitch. It's not quite, Hollywood pitch deck, but it's somewhere maybe in between. Like, what does that look like? And how do we bring the various teams together, maybe through the actual team catalyst, or maybe there's just, somebody on the team that, has been along for the ride and feels passionate about getting their work incorporated into the narrative some way, somehow. I can see, for example, this narrative, any materials that we create for the narrative, being relative to Nate's podcast. But I can also see big chunks of Katerina's Atelier project also being inputs into the narrative. So how do we weave this stuff together in a way that is kind of coherent, that we all know where it is, what it looks like, and how we can leverage it? So that's what that project is. So any questions about that before I hand it over to Francisco to talk about his proposal? Seemed pretty intuitive. By the way, there's a description of this that's in the proposal tool, right? So we're going to share a link to the proposal tool. Maybe, Francisco, you already put that up there. Yes, you did. I knew it. I didn't really have to look. I knew you'd already done it. That's the trust thing. So when you go to that, you'll see a more formal definition than I just rattled off, but the spirit of it is what I just said. And I hope that, first of all, I hope you ratify it. But second of all, I hope that many of you will choose to participate in it. I think there are a number of you that I can imagine will, coming from the projects you've already been on and the fact you're multiple project joiners, will see that you could really add some value to this discussion. So, all right, I'm going to hand it over to Francisco then to talk about the Network First Codex.
Thanks, Brian. And I love the Network First narrative project. It's something that we've been covering on individual discussions. Sometimes you can join me for hours, right? Or in other projects, But I think that definitely as we are start to implement this methodology in real companies, especially, we have to come up with a more effective way to explain to people what Network First is and what are the benefits, and do it in a way that meets where they are rather than meeting our own level of maturity with the methodology. So with that being said, I want to also share the proposal about the Network First Codex. So the situation here basically is that, as you know, we've been working on the community for a number of months. There is a methodology with the AC framework and other practices like network nurturing, network guiding, network drifting, which is also a concept that is starting to be discussed, that is emerging. And we are actually at such a level of maturity where some of the projects are either starting or about to get monetized. And while this is a very positive thing because it means basically we're doing things right, it can also lead to some unintended consequences, right? When we look at other movements like the Agile movement, for example, one of the secrets of their success is that they had an open foundation that didn't belong to anyone, where different people could build monetized projects on top of it. So you have, for example, the Scrum certification, or you have the Scale framework. They are making like about $20 million a year with agile ideas, right? Or the Spotify model as well was a very interesting one with the guilds, right? And the squads. But that didn't prevent anybody from basically adopting agile models or basically integrate agile into their branding, because agile at the end of the day was not owned by anybody, right? And that's a little bit what we're missing here in the Network First manifesto, because our initial manifesto was way less operational than the Agile manifesto in terms of describing basically how the work looks like. And that's because the framework itself was discovered as part of the engagement with the community, right? But now there are basically like two paths that we can follow. One path is basically we just continue the way we're moving forward with initiatives, and as some of the initiatives start getting monetized, there can be some friction about intellectual property, right? Who owns what? Who came up with what part of the framework, and what royalties or percentage is owed to those members? And that creates a very fragile foundation that is very unlikely to scale in the industry, right? So what I'm proposing with the Network First Codex is to basically create a document that synthesizes basically the methodology that has emerged, and we, or basically anybody that feels that has had some contribution on it, either relinquishes the IP on that document, or basically explains what specific part of the framework that person has come up with, and that part of the framework is excluded from the part that is open, right? But we need to really have a open foundation. That's the second path, right? Where we can create this open foundation that is not owned by anybody, where we can now start building monetized initiatives on top of it, whether that looks like courses, certifications, software, different initiatives within and outside of the community that can help these become viral and scalable and become mainstream, right? Because otherwise, if people are concerned about how adopting Network First into your way of work or your brand might lead to IP discussions or arguments or conflicts, that's not really a foundation that is going to enable these to go to the next level. So that's basically what I'm proposing here. And I would like to do this as a process of co-creation, doing it as beautiful as possible, right? So that it can represent the community. And then after that, I understand, so far the overarching goal of the community was to document the Network First methodology itself. But after this, basically the overarching goal would be to actually drive adoption of this model within the industry, right? So it will become like a second phase for the movement. I'll pause it there, but happy to answer any questions. And I'll post as well a video that I posted on LinkedIn where I explain these a bit in more detail. I'm happy to answer any questions on an individual basis if you have any. Right, since we don't have many questions on the proposals today, so if it move forward, or if anybody wants to add anything, please just unmute yourself and add it.
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat right now either. Yeah, and these two things sort of have some degree of entanglement, right? The narrative will certainly talk about the codex, but they are not the same thing, right? The codex is that part that we're going to give away, that's our gift to the rest of the world, right? That's our attempt to make give people a tool that will potentially change the way they work for free, right? That's the free part.
That's a very important detail, Brian. Yeah, the goal is to do this basically. So this is open to the world, our gift to the world. No attribution or recognition is needed, right? Just even asking for attribution can create a concern on whether we are giving the attribution with the way that is legally complying or not, and that can impact adoption. So I would just propose doing what is called CC0, which is like basically pure gift to the world, no attribution needed whatsoever. Sorry, I interrupted you there. Please continue.
Totally fine. As long as there's no further questions, we're going to move on. Again, inviting feedback to both Francisco and I about this. If you have additional questions, we want you to feel free to come to us and check. So I just want to touch on what that ratification process is and just remind everybody how the voting works, right? So we have a standard, a threshold, if you will, for quorum. That's 25 votes, and any vote counts against that quorum. So whether you're voting for or against, or you're abstaining, you've added yourself to the quorum for that particular proposal. And once that quorum hits 25, then the voting is valid, whichever it is, whether it turns out to be for, against, or whatever, then that sort of kicks in. That if you've met the quorum and then we get a minimum of 50% for, we then consider the proposal ratified. Now, part of the reason why we have kind of a lower threshold when we've got 700 or 600 or approaching 700 members is because we're thinking about how many people on average attend these calls, right? And we're hoping that of the folks that are highly active and are informed, that most of those folks will vote, right? So that's the idea there. The voting is open for 7 days after convergence, so starting today. And then another sort of sub-reminder here is that the way that the voting page works, which if you haven't gone out and voted before, might be a little bit confusing. You get to the link for the voting, and it gives you the opportunity to tell it your email. It doesn't say, tell me your work email. It doesn't specifically say, tell me the email that you used when you gave Francisco your email to join NFM, but that's the one you want. And in most cases, that's your work email, right? If you have a work email, we encourage you to use your work email. So that email will be where you will receive your login code number. You get a different code number every time. You can't log into this page and just kind of like stay there forever, right? You have to log in each time you go to vote. Every time there's new proposals added, the page refreshes, it creates a new need to log in. So you go to your folder, and you have to remember that sometimes no reply emails get routed to spam, right? So if you go to the folder for the right email address and you still don't see it, check your spam folder. And then go in, find this like 5-digit numerical code, grab that, pop that into the authentication space on the voting page, which will appear after you told it your email address, and then you'll be able to get in a vote. Does that all make sense? It's a multi-step process, but it's designed to be very tight about the identity of the person voting, so that we don't have any kind of voting mistakes and accidental multi-votes. Cool? All right. So let's talk about the active projects. Here are all of the active projects going on and the catalysts that are leading them. We're about to do breakout rooms based on these different folks. So, for example, if you wanted to know what the Atelier project is, because it's relatively new, you would go into Katarina's breakout room and you might ask her questions. But Before we do that, if folks want to throw out some general questions about any of these projects so that all can hear kind of like the quick response, go right ahead. If you want to do something that's a little bit deeper dive, we'd ask that you save that to the breakout rooms if you think there's going to be dialogue back and forth about your question. But if you have some like sort of yes or no or basic questions, now would be a good time to just throw them out there.
Hi, Brian. Can I ask? I'm a little bit slow today. I didn't have my coffee yet, so I wanted to add a comment about the codex we spoke about before. So I just wanted to know, like, what is the timeline for that? Like, when are we going to create a document and publish it to the world? And I have to say, like, from my view, I think it's a great idea. It's also indirectly creating like a good karma to the world, right? So before we start monetizing and using something that we created, we share it with other people. So yeah, so I like that. I like it from this perspective. Yeah, so Francisco, if you could answer like what is the timeline, that would be great.
Yeah, thank you. And that's exactly the idea, right? Is to make sure that independently of what will happen with this methodology, whether it gets corrupted down the road or turns into something completely different than what we intended with it in the first place, at least we have this core gift to the world that is enough for companies and people to either repeat this experiment or to kind of like adopt it in a self-service way, right? I think that is the component that has been missing in other large initiatives like Lean Six Sigma or Agile or other movements that try to influence the way that we work at scale. In terms of timing, optimistic scenario would be to complete this really within 30 days. So we will be able to actually present it for the next convergence. I really know that many of the projects are about to get monetized, and I don't want this to create a bottleneck to the work that projects like Network First eCommons or Network First Atelier or the Network First book or other projects that might have a name of monetization are doing at the moment, right? So we'll try to do it as fast as possible, but for that, just join the project and let's get it ratified and let's get it done as soon as possible. Yeah.
So just for the Network First workplace design, I will do my best to create everything in 30 days so you can add it into the into the codex so it looks nice.
Yeah, definitely there will be many elements from different projects, right? I mean, I can envision right now there will be definitely the AC framework, some of the practices of nurturing, guiding, drifting. The workplace design is another one that is quite relevant, but we have to really have that internal discussion to say, hey, what part of the work that we have been doing over the last months is relevant for this methodology, and what part is just focused on something else, right? Because we know that some of the projects have not been focused really on contributing to the methodology itself, and that's perfectly fine. But we have to distill that part that is relevant and make it as appealing and easy to digest as possible, right? The goal here is not to create a document that is super scientific or super academic, but something that is appealing and easy to digest by people that haven't come across this concept ever before.
Yeah, and just the last thing that I think that the Brian's project is very important for your project, so they're interconnected. So Brian, no pressure, but basically you need it in 30 days. But that would be great if we can start yours as well, because that's the foundation of the next one.
Yeah, there's a little bit of time pressure on the narrative thing, and that was part of why I proposed it when I did, because I was listening to Francisco say, we want to be able to start talking about these things externally. And I'm like, well, like when? And he's like, well, there are people asking questions now. And I'm like, oh, we better get going on this. So yeah, but thank you for your question, Katerina. Any other kind of, maybe what would be good here is to do like a quick round robin from the catalysts. I don't know that we've got all the catalysts on the line, but for those that are on the line, can you quickly talk about your projects and kind of what they're about for people who might not know, and also for the virtue of the recording, right? People who might listen to this later, so that they can tell either A, which breakout room they want to go to, or B, who they want to follow up with maybe later if they have to jump before we get into the breakout rooms. Because I've noticed a few people have had to leave because they had other conflicts and they jumped off in the middle. So Katerina, since you were just talking, can we start with you and have you talk about workplace design and Atelier a little bit?
Yeah, so workplace design is actually on hold right now. We are creating the whole visualization as for the codex and as part of the final package that we are finalizing. And then we would like to implement it in a real company. So after the codex is published, we would love to go and monetize this. So an atelier, we are just starting this week on Friday. And we are exploring how to visually represent Network First Manifesto. We are collaborating, I'm collaborating outside of Network First with a company in Kyoto that I would love to involve them. And they do handmade fabrics and they look very much like networks. So that's something that maybe we could explore together. If you would like to join, I would be very happy for that.
Awesome. Awesome. Who's next? Joe, you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm heading up the eCommons project. The purpose of eCommons is to help envision how network first principles can guide monetization efforts, basically translating collaborative freedom into economic or financial freedom. So in our first few weeks of dialogue, we're working to clarify specific objectives towards achieving that vision.
Yeah, we've spent a lot of interesting time talking through that because it's not that's actually a tricky neighborhood to like try and do because you're trying to do something with money, but you're trying to make it not about money completely at the same time. So
It's a lot of myth busting.
Joe's got an interesting job. Dan, you want to go first? I think you're on the call. Yes.
Yeah, I can go.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So, hello everyone. Really appreciate everyone being here. One of the things that I'm doing with my Catalyst project is the Network First consulting work. And so what we're doing, and I kind of explained a little bit above, as we're looking to identify all the high value use cases for both consultant practitioners or even anyone in kind of their own orgs that are looking to inherit or begin to use some of these network first principles. It is probably a little bit heavier on the O&A side, but that's also what the group is doing. We just had our first meeting 2 weeks ago, and then we have our second one coming up here on Thursday. So if you're interested in joining, please let me know. We've got definitely have plenty of space for those interested. So the conversations are really just kind of getting kicked off, and I'm really excited kind of for this next meeting on Thursday as we begin to really dive into all the aspects that we think we can bring to the market, as well as kind of identify those high value use cases. Any questions?
I have a question for Dan on the NFN consulting. So do you envision this project leading eventually to some kind of like consulting or coaching certification for Network First, or what do you envision this project looking like say for example in 12 months from now?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know what? I'm not 100% sure on that. I think as one way of being able to offer that to the market, I think kind of that level of either training or just skill enhancement would be terrific. But I think that's kind of a bigger question for the group. I definitely see it as something I want to talk about because I think there's a fantastic opportunity to not only define kind of what we believe, but then also take it to the next level and help people get there on their own. Because again, if we're talking about collaborative freedom here, right, the ability to go out on your own or work within your existing organization and be able to apply these principles is exactly what we're talking about. And one of the only ways to get there is to have a little bit of training so that people unfamiliar with it can understand what it's all about and see if it fits with what they want to try to accomplish.
Brian, just one question there. So I noticed that when somebody is intervening, like it's creating echo with your own mic. So if you can mute your mic while the other people are intervening, otherwise it's overlapping constantly. Do you get that, Brian?
No, I'm sorry. I was answering. I was responding to a chat real quick. What was that?
Yeah, what I mentioned is that when people are intervening, it's creating feedback because you're not muting your mic. I know it's difficult because you're the facilitator, but if you can mute your mic while the other people are intervening, otherwise creating, I don't know if it's only for me, please let me know, but I'm just hearing it
No,
with the last couple of
same
interventions.
here, yeah, I can hear it.
You can hear it? Oh, sorry.
No worries.
Mute myself.
Can you try
Okay.
to speak now? Yeah.
Yeah,
No, it's fine.
I'm muted him. Just the point, Brian, is when you intervene, unmute, but when other people are speaking, you have to mute it because otherwise it creates a feedback and we cannot hear it properly. But please feel free to unmute yourself and continue with the presentation whenever you're ready.
So I'm done with my portion, but again, anyone that wants to reach out would love to talk to them and have you join the group if that's of interest.
Dan, I have a question for you, if I may. Yeah, I was
Sure.
talking to a prototyping company yesterday that I tried to deal with a long time ago on another transformative tech project. And just exploring the idea of putting together something that allows companies to understand where networks fit into the scheme of things so that they don't control them. So it would be more of a natural like informal networks as being a the powerhouse for engagement and a whole lot of other things, knowing that the fear of engagement is pretty high because then you lose control, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just sort of wanting to put that out there as something that is background consideration, certainly for my project, but it's also relevant, I think, to what you're doing there.
Yeah, no, that's definitely part of kind of what I think we're going to end up discussing, is particularly because even after implementation, kind of what happens within orgs, within the teams, within even the initial pilot project. So yeah, for sure, that definitely see it being part of it. Any other
I would
questions?
just say, I think, Dan, as you get to the point where you are thinking about certification, or you might think about their certification, I know Larry and I have been kicking around the whole idea of is there an L&D project sort of lurking in the background somewhere for creating materials? And so when we get to that point, remind both Larry and I if there's a need, because we're here to help.
Excellent. Yeah. That sounds great. And thanks for the reminder on that. I'll take that down as a note.
Larry, I'm volunteering us.
Yeah, my other brother there. So I just follow on with that. Yes, we are talking about that and talking about kind of a knowledge management layer, just stored repository of stuff, and then through a learning layer, be available for different kinds of things. And one of those purposes would be to support any kind of certification or validation of skills around NFM if people wanted to pursue that. So Dan, I may join your group and we'll chat about that.
Awesome. So I'm looking kind of around at the other catalyst. It looks like Jaya's not on the call, which is part of what I was doing before, which is why I wasn't responding to Francisco. But Francisco, can you talk to the NFM O&A project on behalf of Jaya since she's not here?
Sure. So with the NFM O&A, both Jaya and I are catalysts. Just I focus more on the active O&A component of it and Jaya on the passive O&A component. So the goal basically for the NFM O&A project or Network First O&A project is just to explore what's the role of organizational network analysis in a network first framework, right? So far, we've carried both active O&A based on surveys and passive O&A based on analysis of metadata from Slack. We haven't shared any information at individual level. We tried really to take a very conservative approach as we start implementing these approaches. But so far, kind of like the biggest lesson learned is that O&A in a network first context appears to be first way for the community to visualize itself in a way that is non-hierarchical, which that by itself already contributes to the sense of decentralization. Second, it helps us identify basically specific bottlenecks or areas for improving in terms of cross-region collaboration, for example. One of the lessons learned we identified from the O&A is that we had the regions in Middle East and Asia Pacific were disconnected, probably due to the time zone difference. We've been trying to mitigate that ever since. And as Brian was mentioning, with regards to, potential matching of mentors and new members, I think there is an opportunity there to leverage agentic AI together with ONA to automate some of these interventions that can enhance our experience as member of the Network First Manifesto community. But that's something where we have to maybe enable a system for people to opt in and, basically volunteer to receive these interventions. And that's something that we can apply by default due to the limitations that we have with frameworks like GDPR. And members like Johan, have been doing amazing work, doing the analysis on the Slack side at aggregate level and looking at basically how people have been interacting across different projects and channels. So that would be a quick summary. Happy to answer any questions on that.
So did you have a question about that? I see your hand up.
It wasn't a question about that. It's a more general comment. I'm seeing comments to the effect that people are not able to join as anywhere near as many projects as they would like. We as Catalysts have a mechanism for storing meeting progress and discussion progress in the Slack channels. So, especially for people who are not in the projects or not familiar with the discussion or the projects themselves, I'm very interested in, or we're all very interested in how effective those materials are in keeping people abreast of what we're doing.
Thanks for adding that, Joe. Yes, we all want it. We definitely need. We're trying a bunch of different ways to keep people abreast of what we're doing. Not sure all of it's working, or if there's more that we need to do, but we're going to keep figuring that out.
I'll be adding, by the way, the links to join each of the projects on the Slack channel. So those of you that are not so familiar with Slack can just join the project directly and then be engaged in the meetings.
Okay. Were there any other questions for Francisco about the ONA project, either passive or active, or a bit of both? I think I didn't see Curtis on the call. Curtis, are you on the call? Are you hiding somewhere? I'm going to say no. Do we want to? Can somebody speak to the synthetic ONA piece too? Francisco, would you be the best person?
Anybody else wants to do it? They have been involved with Curtis? Ivana raised the hand, so maybe Ivana, if you want to go ahead and do that.
Yeah, I'm in that project. So far, I know Sylvia's built, I guess, the AI engine or whatever in the back, and she's built the algorithms using Claude Code. And we've split into two groups right now. So it's one of us. So half of the group, Sylvia, and I believe I can't remember who it was, but anyways, it's split into two groups, and one group is working on more of the dashboard on the front end, and then the other one is working more on the back end, making sure the algorithms are what they're supposed to be. So that's where we're at right now, and we're gonna start that split group exercise. I believe it's next week. O'Brien, you're muted.
I have to say, I'm going to confess, I'm going to have a moment of trust. I'm not a professional Zoom user. I have spent almost my entire career on either WebEx or MS Teams. So if you sense a little friction in my technology execution today, then I'm learning as I go in this safe space that we call NFM.
Yeah, no worries.
I'm going to turn it over to Dawn. Dawn, you want to talk about vital cartography? I think it's one of our most fascinating projects, and I'd love for everybody to hear kind of your overview of that and any quick update you want to give.
Sure. Yep. We're at a bit of an intersection right now. We've had a core group come together and bounce ideas around for the experience. Like, because the real question was, when you have a concept like that, the question is, what is it? Exactly. And so we've been throwing the conversations around, well, let's just think through what it might look like. And so I did a vital cartography deck with Claude AI's help, and I posted all that stuff is posted on the Slack channel, but it was kind of the experience at a very high level, very roughly, and with a bunch of parts left out. But where we're at right now is at a bit of an intersection, because it's a totally different worldview. I mean, I asked Claude AI, what's the difference between, or where do the principles that are backing vital cartography match up against the principles of Network First Manifesto? And it's a different worldview. It's more of an artistic, what do networks look like as you live them, being a living network yourself as a human. And what does that look like? And then obviously the original intent I had was to bring that into business. So that's the Dan George world of that, is how do you see a fractal, the networks as a fractal of who we are as individuals and what happens when you put them together in a collective. Hope I didn't lose anybody with that, but it's not there yet. It's not, we sort of said, let's just focus on the public side of it. With the idea that the kids drag their parents in and the thinking that the parents have probably got a job somewhere. And so you're really looking at how do we bypass the cognitive walls that are so attached to reductionist thinking, so attached to looking at things like linearly, this go here, this go there, that kind of step by step, into an experience, an immersive interactive experience that shows you that your body is a living network. Organizations are living networks. So that's the essential part of it. Last meeting, and I say we're at an intersection because I have now a team of 4 artists. Kim Cord, who's part of the Network First Manifesto, is our interoception expert. So she's going to be working with a sonic architecture artist out of Alabama who does installations on outside sonic music outside, and it's all participant activated and solar powered. So he does some very cool work, former punk rocker, and just really interesting, fun stuff. I have the other artist that is from Candice Joni, who I brought into the network into the community here, and she paints on bodies amongst other things. And in fact, she's got one artist that's got an entire estuary painted on her neck. And so, and then so there's 4. So there's 4 in total. Kim, well, I guess I'm missing somebody. Why am I missing somebody? My brain just went sideways. Anyway, all to say that we're now taking it and putting it on the ground. So what is it?
Craig Colarusso.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Jeanette. Jeanette's been a big part of that. So Craig is our sonic architect. Help me out, Jeanette.
He's worked with Crystal Bridges Museum of American Art, and so he does a lot of work where he takes sort of natural inputs and then he creates a way to make it into sonic art. So it's really exciting that he's on board with the team.
And Jeanette has been one of our key contributors to artists doing cool stuff. And the other person who's our technical director is out of Toronto. He's actually from Chile, and that is Simon. And he did something called RISA, which is rhizomal. So basically, it's all of these people bring nature and understanding of natural systems and living systems to the project. So yeah, that's a long story, but we're in a new shift and I don't know what it's going to look like yet, but I've got to get the funding for it to bring these artists on in a fair and equitable way and respectful way, essentially. Yeah. Thanks, Jeanette, for posting that.
Yeah. Thank you both. We've got a semiotics project because we think symbology is important, but we also think that these sort of organic based ways of representing things, whether it's through a visual medium, through a sound medium, through some combination of different mediums. Donna's exploring all of that. If that fascinates you, then please join her project. I want to kind of keep us moving because now we're starting to run a little bit behind. Sarah recently gave she's not here, so she can't give an update or talk about what her projects are. So I'm going to sort of step in and do that for her real quickly. If you're interested in what's going on with Poetics, she just wrote up a quick update about that on the main channel, the main English channel. I don't know if she also did it in Spanish. Francisco, do you know? Did she drop one in the Spanish channel too? I don't know if she did, but if you look at the English channel, the main Slack channel, you can read her update. Basically, the Poetics team is helping sort of offload some of the work of maintaining and developing the lexicon from Francisca, who originally went out, created a web page, wrote the manifesto, right? But there's all of these words that now are starting to like take on very specific meanings, and so as those definitions are needed and they're refined, the Poetics team jumps in, works to vet different ways of looking at things, tries to gel that, move it through our 8C process, and then the output and circulating ends up back on the website, either in the glossary or other places on the website as well. So it's a partnership, I think, between Francisco maintaining the website per se and us giving him input so he doesn't have to devote all his time to doing all of that. We call it Poetics, but it's a little bit that may not capture all of it, or it may capture even more than what we're doing. We're not trying to translate NFM into poetry per se, but there is some poetry that gets read in the process of inspiring us to think hard and connect with meaning. The NFM book piece, partly to the question that I got from Mark earlier, is the idea that like if we were going to go beyond the narrative project, like well beyond the narrative project, and actually write a book about NFM, what would that look like? What would be the chapters? How would we organize it? And how would we cite different people and their contributions to the pieces that have come to be NFM, right? So that is something that we expect will probably maybe be monetized and probably shared external to the network. So that's the purpose of that. So if you're interested in either helping organize the book or you're interested in contributing to the book, then join that Slack channel and connect with Sarah. So who does that leave? Francisco, I think it's you and
Nathan.
Nate, you want to go first? Nathaniel.
Sure. I don't mind going first. So when it comes to the podcast, I am almost ready to start recording. I'm going to be recording next week. Kim has been very helpful in offering to record the intro for me and the outro. She's been quite helpful, as have everybody actually. And initially, we're going to be interviewing all the project catalysts, probably just 8 or so, or maybe 10 for the first series. And then we will have another planning meeting and go from there. So from next week, I'm going to be cancelling the podcast weekly meeting and arranging to just interview people one-to-one. And that's it, really. It's just going to be called Network First Podcast. And it's about future work, connection, and basically inspiring people to think about the future of work changing and actually how they can fit into the new paradigm, which is what we're all here for, to actually understand more about how that is happening. And at the minute, from what I've been seeing with Claude Code, Claude Cowork, and these tools, it's really moved very quickly in the last 6 months compared to the past 5 years before. And it's incremental, the change that's been going on. When you look at 30,000 people disappearing from Oracle's payroll to focus on AI data centers, it makes you think about the future of work and the future of the people that you know and society as well. So that's it from me. If you want to get involved, you can obviously sign up for the Slack channel and keep your eyes peeled and just help to kind of share whatever video I post around the episode that's coming out. and help me to build subscribers. And I'd greatly appreciate that. That would be much appreciated. So I'm looking forward to it. I think it's going to be good fun. It's nice to have a different podcast, do a different topic, because I'm big into doing AI and jobs around AI in my other show. And this one is literally around network, and how is that network going to affect the future of work, and how are we going to be getting involved. So yeah, it's going to be quite good, I think.
Thanks,
Thank
Nate.
you.
I think it's a gift that we have an experienced podcaster as a member of the network, because like I said a minute ago, we are obviously trying to message in a bunch of different ways, a bunch of different channels, and this is a very important channel in the modern scheme of things. So thank you for that. Francisco, you want to go next?
Yeah, and I wanted to suggest, Brian, since we are right now here about 18 people and we still have to cover some projects, I want to propose some exercise. Maybe I wanted to propose that we skip this time the breakout rooms and just have a general conversation among the people here, since we most know each other anyways. Is that okay with you? Just to know how much time I have to provide the update.
No, I think that's fine. Let's just check thumbs up from people that want to be flexible and can leave the breakout room model behind. Who's with us? Show me some reactions. I'm seeing a few. I'm seeing one. Some folks are like, wait, where's the reaction button? I think we have quorum now. I think the motion passes, Francisco.
Perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna give just a very quick update on the projects that I'm involved in. Before that, I want to say, you might not have been an active member of actually all the projects that have taken place in the Network First, but as we have started implementing the Network First company pilots, it has become logistically impossible for me to attend all the meetings. So for those of you, in viral cartography, synthetic RNA podcast, that I had to deprioritize it due to not having a direct link with the Network First methodology itself. But I'm more than happy to contribute asynchronously and support your project, and hopefully I can re-engage at some point. But please, understand the lack of availability. On the projects that I'm catalyzing right now, the Network First events, basically we've been focusing on iterating these network convergences. We're trying to find like different people to facilitate them. So the same way, for example, I started facilitating them, then Sarah, then Brian. If any of you is interested in facilitating these network convergences, feel free to join the events, meetings, and propose basically to become a facilitator, and that's how we're doing it at the moment. We're also organizing the annual Network First event, which will take place on August 13th. So that's going to be a big one as well, where hopefully we can do at least a half a day on-site sessions in San Francisco and other hubs as well, on top of people joining online. And then with the Semiotics project, we've been exploring how basically the community has been using symbology, both icons, colors, numbers, to create its own identity. And what are the best practices that we can somehow recommend to those companies that are now starting to adopt Network First? Because this, engaging in the co-creation of symbols, numerology, colors, it really creates a very strong sense of belonging. And I think it's something that we should both put our own identity at the disposal of other people that want to use it later on when adopting Network First, but also help them understand how they can do this by themselves. And you can see that, we started with this Hub and Spot network logo, which is right now on the screen, but then it has been evolving to different versions, like this one with the sun and the moon. There are different versions that have been used with for the Zoom background of Brian, for example, which is empty in the middle, or Nat adopted himself in an orange color as well, or I know that Joe, for example, adopted a different version for the eCommons, more in like blue color. So, this is a beautiful thing. We can kind of like create our own version of the common symbology that we use. And the other one with the company pilot, you might have seen on LinkedIn, super exciting that we have an official partnership with Cornell University. There are like 4 members of Cornell that are engaged in these projects. And we have at the moment like 5 companies that have volunteered to pilot this methodology. One of them is already using it. There are 2 of them are in the United States. One is in LATAM, and there are another 2 in Europe. So super exciting to see basically how we're going to document these first case studies. And again, this is open to anybody that wants to be part of it. I also wanted to propose an exercise here, Brian, since you mentioned the Spanish Slack channel. So when I set up that channel originally in the Slack workspace, the idea was for people that were not fluent in English to have a forum where they could speak Spanish, right? And kind of like at that time, we had really a high percentage of members from the Latin community. So it really made sense to have a separate channel to foster engagement. But actually, as we have expanded the community, first, we realized that most of the members from Spanish-speaking country are very fluent in English, first of all. And the presence of the Spanish channel was creating actually a lot of confusion for members that were joining who are not fluent in Spanish. And this was one of the main channels they were directly given access to. And really, we haven't really had a lot of activity there lately. So I wanted to actually, since we have here several members from the Latin community, I wanted to propose to actually close that channel due to inactivity so we can focus all the activity on the English channel. And that way, the interface and the experience can be a little bit easier for new members. Would you be okay with that? I mean, like I have here prepared the poll, so I just have to push it and see basically what you think about it. That's something you would like to do now? Because I don't think this is like important enough to submit a proposal and wait for 7 days. Or if any of you really is very passionate about the Spanish channel, please let me know and we can leave it, right? But I still see a lot of activity there over the last month.
It's okay for me.
Yeah. So great. Since you are one of the representatives of Latin, actually, what I would like to do is.
For me too, Francisco.
Thank you. So basically, I mean, we can just vote here. I just launched the poll here. If you want to vote on it right away, right, we can see just to kind of like formalize it, or I close it to reference that. And with a 5 out of 5, anybody else wants to participate? Can just leave it for a full minute there. We got 8. Let's wait until the end of the minute if anybody else wants to participate, and then we can close it. But thanks to all of you, the non-Spanish speaker that have been using ChatGPT to add your comments there. Hopefully it was a fun experience at least, as for those of you to practice Spanish. Perfect. So then, it seems that we have 100% quorum. So I'll proceed. I'll put the comment. Thanks for your support.
Yes, the only condition, Francisco, is the next year we are to make a very, very big party and congress in Latin countries to join and go to the party.
Exactly. And we have actually for the annual summit, both Mexico and Sao Paulo have volunteered to host an on-site hub on top, in addition to San Francisco and also Budapest, right? So that will also provide a forum basically to engage in Spanish language as part of that event.
That would be fantastic. I think one thing I would say though, Francisco, is we probably then don't need to call the main channel the English channel anymore. We should probably just call it the main.
That's a very good point, actually. I love that suggestion. I completely agree with that.
Awesome. Any other questions from anybody to any of the catalysts here? We can take a few more minutes. I think we've got another 5 minutes before we hit the closing section of the agenda.
I would like to propose, because I know that Mark Bowers here, he has really many years of experience with observing all the evolution of the Agile methodology from the initial manifesto all the way to the emergence of different paid certifications. And I would love for Mark to share his perspective, basically what has been seen so far in the community. Are there any best practices, any lessons learned that we can get from the Agile experience that we can implement here while we are still at an early stage, not to make the same mistakes, or things that are doing good or well, basically, compared to that movement? I think he can offer a very unique perspective. Both Mark with regards to Agile, and there are other members that have a lot of experience in the decentralization community with the DAO movement. That is also another movement that is relevant to what we are doing here. I'm sure, Mark, if you are still around there.
Yeah, I'm here.
A moment ago. Oh, perfect.
Yeah. I have a lot of comments about that. I've seen the full life cycle of different, several different frameworks in Agile and Lean and things like that. Not so much Lean because that's a pretty solid thing with Toyota, but it's interesting. It's interesting where if you start certifications, and then it becomes something that people can make money at, then people come in out of the blue with no real background in trying to implement anything worthwhile. But if you get that certification, you can make a lot of money. So, and then recruiters are looking for people to do that. And so you get people who sort of like become the clergy for for that sort of religion. and an executive will ask them like, "Oh, we're having a problem here. What do we do?" And they get very good at spouting off, the doctrine. They can recite back to you, sort of like a robot. They can just spit back something like, "Well, you should always do this, and the 5 points of whatever is this," and and it's completely useless, and it seems borderline. I don't know if it's incompetence or immoral or what you'd call it, but it kind of dilutes the ocean of of people that actually working hard to do something like Network First is trying to do. So it can be a really dangerous thing. I'll stop my rant there, but it's, if you want to get people up to speed, that's a good thing. If you want to, you educate people, you train dogs. If you go into an environment where the paradigm is command and control, they're just going to take your certification knowledge and retranslate that and just keep their command and control. So if you really want to implement something, you have to be, I think, pretty careful about that approach.
I completely agree with what you have shared, Mark. I think there is a great wisdom in that reflection.
I'm preaching to the choir. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I've experienced that myself. There was a competition of saying, "Well, I'm more agile than you because I do 5 retrospectives a day. You do only 2," and it was nonsense at the end of the day. But the thing here is, right now we are all very excited about this Network First framework, right? We understand that we're at a very early stage in terms of industry adoption, even though we have actually here in this community some of the people that are the most influential in the world in their respective fields, right? But right now, what I am interested in, I would love to hear thoughts from other folks as well, is the certifications and courses is really a very strong mechanism for people to co-opt the movement and drive adoption, right? We might not necessarily want to prevent them from doing that. What we can do different compared to the Agile movement or the Lean movement is maybe to create a foundation with the codex that is comprehensive enough so that those certifications are not really needed for the methodology to be adopted in self-service mode, right? That's something that I didn't see really with the Agile Manifesto. Agile Manifesto, again, was more comprehensive than our manifesto. Our manifesto is very aspirational, but it was not really as comprehensive as, allowing companies to adopt these practices. Much of that, for example, came from the Spotify model, where they came up with this idea of guilds and squads, and etc. Right? So I think, I would not completely renounce the certifications. I think it's a way for people to get something tangible out of it. It's just very important to find the right combination. All what we do in the end is about balance of different energies, right? Combination of interaction with the corporate world and meeting where they are, and at the same time trying to show them how a self-service approach and a completely open approach works in practice, whether it is people that are creating their own company, decentralized organizations, or just companies that want to adopt it. But I agree that to the extent that we can avoid the clergy component and then intermediation, that's really the key of of what we want to avoid here, right? To experience people the raw version, help people experience the raw version of it in a way that is as fictionless and as user-friendly as possible. I think definitely lots of good discussions are going to come up in the next months on this.
Yeah. How do you get this to a lot of people and do a lot of good with it without it quickly becoming something that the big agile where there's 5 corporations that really just do everything, and it has really little value until people start realizing and they're not getting anything out of it.
Codex project, people, it's going to be a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah, can I say something? So when I also experienced agile implementation in a big multinational, and what bothered me personally the most was just because I was a Lean Six Sigma black belt that time. What I didn't like, it's the criticism towards Lean because agile is better, right? And maybe it was just the organization that did it, but at the end it came from Lean as well, some of the practices, right? So if it's positioned as against something that was already
right
in the industry, right, that could be perceived as a negative thing. Certainly I perceive it as something negative because I learned all that process and I saw that it was an evolution of Lean, but people took it, those that didn't know anything about Lean took it as, oh, Lean is bad and we are better as an act, right?
And it's always going on with all across the LinkedIn. They're like, Agile's dead, Lean is dead. My new thing that I thought up last week is the new thing. And, it's just a tool. It's another thing. They all work. But then if you just come in and kind of impose them on people, then none of them work. You can get any framework to not work. That's, badly implemented. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's great.
I think just to think about this certification thing, I think there's like certifying people within us to go out and talk about it the right way. And then there's trying to certify the people that are out there to use it. And I think that's a bridge too far from what I'm hearing. That's
so more of a guild approach than
I think
we know enough to do this effectively and be competent among ourselves so we can kind of figure that out.
Right. And
just
so
put it out as a commodity then.
Sorry, so the thing you were just talking about, like the going out and being too priestly about it. How do we train people to, like, they're passionate, they're true believers. How do we train them to contain that in a way that doesn't seem preachy, doesn't seem like we've gone beyond evangelizing something we believe in to like compelling something, and to Katarina's point, saying this is better than that, or you should use this instead of that, instead of just it's another tool, it's another way of looking at it. If it resonates with you, good. If it doesn't, that's okay too, right? Like that's the training. We need to train ourselves more than we need to train others. I think Larry, do you have an opinion about that? Am I speaking from our collective consciousness?
I'd agree with that a lot. Yeah.
Well, being the clergy member on board here, the ordained clergy of the Catholic Church, I can tell you that a lot of the pushback and the resistance is when we say clergy like that, like someone who's trying to impose their beliefs on you and trying to make you behave in a certain way. I mean, just in general, and particularly in religion. And the same thing. It's what Mark's talking about. I've had that history too, and understand all that and everything DISC and Wiley and all of that, and the certification models and trying to monetize that and trying to certify clients and through you, and it just became a religion then with its tenets that people try to impose and actually even charge you for. I might reflect from my own personal standpoint, I'll end with this, is that I find that invitation into, in my case, I'm inviting people into a deeper relationship with God. And how do I do that is by finding out where people are and inviting them through their gifts to be able to approach God in a different kind of a way, having a deeper relationship. And it's an invitation. It's like Jesus did all the time. It was an invitation. It was never a command. and control structure as some people experience church. So I'll stop with that, but that's the clerical perspective on that from me.
Thanks, Larry. I see Ivana's got her hand up too.
Yeah, so I also wanted to add to that as well. As far as agile goes, I've seen that mess as well. Being in HR and talent acquisition early in my career when I was like a headhunter, I had clients that would say, okay, we want agile. And the whole job interview with candidates was always about who has the most certifications, not can they apply agile properly, not if they understand the concept. It was all about who has the most certifications, who's the most agile candidate out of all the candidates. Like, I know exactly what Francisco and Katerina are talking about because I've seen it even in team building and recruitment. It's just, yeah, it was a mess. Also, I also agree with Deacon Larry. It's about meeting people where they are, because as much as I want things to change really quickly. We all want that. It's not how the world works. People are, even in my own career, I've seen people very attached to their job titles. I've seen them turn down salaries, salaries that pay 30K more, 40K, like really big salary increases, because they're like, that title does not match what I want to, whatever, reflect to the world or whatever it is, right? It's not a senior director, blah, 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 VP of whatever. So I don't want that role. You know what I mean? So people are very attached. I've seen a situation where, where it was a dock manager. She managed the warehouse stocks, and we offered her a promotion to be in our corporate office. She way more money, right? She doesn't have to lead people. She's managing the accounts. So account management. She, and we're, it's more money. You don't have to be in a warehouse dock is not a comfortable place to be. It's not a comfortable place to be. It's cold in the winter time because, the garage doors open, all that stuff. So we thought we were offering her something great. She started to cry. She was emotional. She says, I'm not going to have a manager title anymore. I'm not going to be the manager of a team anymore. You know what I mean? I've seen it in my career. People are very, very attached. And I don't think it's as easy to go in and say, okay, kind of beat them with a stick and say the network is the best way and the best way. Of course, I feel that way. I believe that we should move away from hierarchy. But we can't, it's not as easy as going in and saying, okay, we're going to just flip everything upside down, make it a network, because I've seen it. People are very, very, very attached.
Francisco, looks like you've got your hand up. I want to recognize what you want to say.
So we're 5 minutes above the time, and I have to add another person to have a meeting on this link. But just wanted to add, and for Katerina wants to add something as well before we wrap up. But I think it's very important as well, and maybe I'm not doing a great job at it. That the movement is not perceived as being adversarial or confrontational to existing things that are in society, right? Many of the established movements that operate in society, they really start with a very pure intention, and many people that are involved there still have very pure intention. It's normal that as things scale, they get corrupted, because sometimes people we have good and evil in ourselves, and we bring the worst of ourselves into this, especially when things get monetized, right, and things get more formalized. It doesn't matter if it's a startup or a religion or a new methodology. So I think it's important that the Network First movement is not perceived as being confrontational with hierarchy, confrontational with religion, confrontational with previous methodologies. What we are trying to do in a way is to recover part of the original spirit of some of these movements, that's of helping others create good for society and trying to learn from the mistakes as this movement scales, so that we don't repeat those mistakes. And it's not an easy thing, but let's not underestimate what we have achieved here. Really, we have a very beautiful methodology that is proven that is able to create decentralized work at scale with minimum or no supervision. And that's something I think that can create a lot of value, right? So let's try to be also humble, and let's try to just acknowledge that we're at a very early stage, and we have a lot to learn from these other movements that have already created a lot of value for the world out there. I'll pause it there. Katerina, you want to add something as well before we wrap up?
Yeah, I had the same idea. So I just wanted to say that the intention is very important, right? So for example, the organization where I was working, the intention wasn't positive. It was about, we need to restructure the company. We are in a hurry. We have to do it right now. We have to fire people. So who is going to know about Agile will stay in the company, basically. And that's state of panic where all the people are trying to learn something they don't understand. They're trying to become an expert. They criticize the other thing, right? So how you put it in the company, that's like, in my opinion, one of the most important thing, right? So yeah, just that.
Well, I really want to thank everybody for all of the input today. I think we accomplished something good here in sort of getting this organic involvement and having a little bit of topic movement back and forth across projects, and maybe not being so channeled into project by project conversation, but having a bigger conversation, which, like Francisco said, we had a little bit smaller group, so we could kind of do that. So that was fun, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. But now we need to let you get back to the rest of your day. So thank you so much for joining our Convergence today. And I want to again thank Francisco and the rest of the Catalyst leaders for allowing me to facilitate today. My pleasure, and a lovely meeting some of you today for the first time. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening, whichever that might be. And we'll see you again in like a month.
Thank you, Brian. Great job facilitating today.
Thanks, Brian.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.